The night was a canvas stretched across the heavens, painted with the soft brushstrokes of moonlight and the silent glimmer of distant stars. A hush lingered in the air, a silence so delicate it felt as though even the breeze had chosen to tiptoe around the world, unwilling to disturb the sacred quiet that midnight carried. On the balcony of an old, ivy-clad apartment building overlooking the city, Emma stood with her hands resting lightly on the cold iron railing. The city lights flickered beneath her like constellations fallen to the earth, and she wondered if those countless tiny illuminations were the secret wishes of people who, like her, were wide awake at such. She wore a simple white dress that shimmered faintly in the moonlight, her long hair cascading over her shoulders like a river of dark silk. Her eyes, deep and thoughtful, held the reflection of the stars, as though the universe itself had poured its mysteries into them. There was an air of waiting in her stillness, like she stood on the threshold of something fragile, something rare, something that could only be born in the intimacy of night. Inside the apartment, the faint ticking of an old clock measured the silence in steady beats, each second echoing with the promise of a story that had yet to be told. Adrian stepped quietly onto the balcony, carrying with him the warmth of his presence that immediately softened the chill of the air. His frame was tall and strong, yet there was gentleness in the way he moved, as though he knew the night was a sacred companion to be treated with reverence. He wore a charcoal sweater and dark trousers, casual yet thoughtful, as if he had chosen his attire not for appearance but for comfort in this rare and cherished hour. His face bore the calmness of a man who had found his sanctuary in someone else's presence, and when his gaze settled on Emma, it was as though the world around him vanished, leaving only her as the truth he wanted to keep. Without speaking, he stepped closer, his shoulder brushing hers lightly, a silent reminder that distance between them had no place under the silver veil of the midnight sky. Emma turned her face toward him, her lips curving into a faint smile, the kind that carried with it both shyness and recognition, as though she had been waiting for this moment, yet still marveled at its reality. "Do you ever wonder," she whispered, her voice quieter than the rustle of leaves, "if nights like these are written for us? If the stars gather just to hear our voices, as though our words matter to the universe itself?" Her words hung in the air like fragile threads of silk, weaving themselves into the fabric of the moment. Adrian's smile deepened, his eyes never leaving hers as he answered softly, "I don't wonder. I know. The silence feels complete only because you are in it. Without you, it would just be emptiness. With you, it becomes music even if no words are spoken." The honesty in his tone made her heart race, not with excitement alone but with the certainty that this moment, simple yet profound, was something eternal. Their closeness was not measured by inches, but by the quiet heartbeat of trust, of belonging, of love that needed no declaration to prove its truth. The night stretched itself around them like a blanket woven from starlight, shielding their hearts from the noise of the waking world. Down below, the city continued its hum, cars whispered along the distant roads, and somewhere a siren wailed faintly, but up here, none of it mattered. The balcony had become a kingdom of two souls, a private sanctuary where time softened and reality bent to their shared stillness. Emma's hand brushed against Adrian's, her fingers hesitating for a heartbeat before curling around his in a quiet confession that words could never capture. His grip was steady, reassuring, as if he had been waiting all along for that silent choice. The simple touch sent ripples through the night, as though the stars themselves had leaned closer to witness this fragile intimacy. For a moment, no words were spoken, because none were needed. The midnight air carried the weight of a love so tender, so unspoken yet undeniable, that it seemed the universe itself had conspired to grant them this moment. And in that stillness, beneath the endless dome of stars, the first thread of their midnight love talk was woven, delicate, luminous, and infinite. The silence between them stretched, but it was not an empty silence, it was alive, filled with the rhythm of two hearts quietly learning the same song. Emma leaned her head back slightly, her gaze drifting upward to the vast expanse of sky that seemed endless, a boundless ocean of night scattered with islands of light. She had always loved the stars, they made her feel both insignificant and infinite at once, like she was a fleeting spark in the endlessness, yet somehow chosen to witness such beauty. "When I was a child," she began softly, her voice tinged with nostalgia, "I used to lie on the rooftop of my parents' house and pretend that the stars were tiny windows. I'd imagine that each one was a doorway into another world, a place where dreams could be touched and love was never uncertain. Back then, it felt easier to believe that somewhere, someone was waiting for me under the same sky. Her words fell gently, like petals drifting into the night, carrying a secret hope that had lived within her for years. Adrian listened, his eyes never leaving her face. He didn't interrupt, didn't rush to fill the silence that followed her words, because he knew some truths needed space to breathe. When he finally spoke, his tone was tender, weighted with both admiration and understanding. "I think you were right," he said, his voice low and steady, almost a vow. "Someone was waiting for you. Maybe not in another world, but here. In this one. On this balcony. Right now." His words brushed against her heart like a warm wind on a cold night, wrapping around her, making her chest tighten with a mixture of longing and fulfillment. For a moment, she looked at him as if seeing him not just as he was, but as every answered prayer, every quiet wish she had ever whispered to the stars. Her lips trembled into a smile, not the shy kind this time, but the kind that carried gratitude, as though she had finally found the place her soul had always belonged. The night seemed to lean closer around them, listening, holding their confessions in its velvet hands. A cool gust of air swept across the balcony, stirring the loose strands of Emma's hair, and without thinking, Adrian reached out, brushing them gently back behind her ear. His touch lingered a second longer than necessary, as though his fingertips could memorize the curve of her skin. The intimacy was quiet, unhurried, yet powerful, like a truth too sacred to be rushed. Emma closed her eyes for a heartbeat, allowing herself to feel the weight of that simple gesture, the way it told her more than 1,000 words ever could. When she opened them again, the world seemed sharper, the lights below glowed brighter, the stars above shimmered fiercer, and Adrian's presence beside her felt like the most certain thing in an uncertain universe. "You make it sound so simple," Emma whispered, her voice trembling slightly, betraying the vulnerability she tried to hide. "Like love is just waiting, patient and sure, until we arrive at it. But what about the moments when we doubt? The nights when loneliness feels endless? The times when it seems like love is only for stories, not for people like us?" Her words were not a protest but a confession, a fragile unveiling of the insecurities she had carried like shadows. Adrian did not flinch. Instead, he leaned closer, his voice steady, carrying the weight of conviction. "Love isn't always easy, Emma. It isn't always kind or gentle. But it's real. And sometimes, it waits until we've walked through the dark long enough to recognize its light. You doubted, you endured, and still you're here. And so am I. That means something. That means everything." His hand found hers again, their fingers intertwining, and this time, she did not hesitate. The city below continued its distant hum, unaware of the sacred exchange unfolding above its rooftops. A siren wailed again somewhere far off, and the faint laughter of strangers drifted upward from the streets, but none of it reached them. In their world, there was only the quiet gravity of truth binding them together. Emma's eyes glistened, not with sadness but with the overwhelming beauty of being seen, of being known. She had carried her heart carefully, guarded against disappointment, yet here, under the midnight sky, she felt it unfold like a fragile flower daring to bloom. Adrian's words echoed in her, not as promises, but as anchors. She realized then that love was not about escaping doubt or loneliness, but about finding the person who made those shadows bearable, who turned silence into music and stillness into belonging. And with that realization, her midnight love talk with Adrian deepened not as a fleeting whisper, but as the beginning of something infinite, written not in stars, but in the tender spaces between two souls. The night stretched on, each passing second weaving itself into the delicate tapestry of their togetherness. For a long while, they let the silence rest between them, a silence that was no longer uncertain but alive with meaning, as though the universe had finally given them permission to breathe the same rhythm. Emma's eyes lingered on the horizon where the faint glow of the city met the vast black of the sky, and she wondered aloud, her voice carrying a dreamy weight, "Do you ever imagine what our lives might look like, years from now? Not just nights like this, but the days in between, the mornings, the ordinary hours, the seasons that change around us?" Her words trembled with both hope and fear, the quiet question of someone brave enough to long for something beyond the moment, yet cautious enough to know that futures were fragile things. She turned to him slowly, her gaze uncertain, as though afraid of what she might see in his eyes. Adrian, however, did not flinch from the depth of her question. His gaze softened, and a faint smile tugged at his lips, not one of amusement, but of a man who had thought about this before, perhaps more times than he could admit. "I imagine it all the time," he confessed, his voice steady, honest, like a confession whispered to the night itself. "I imagine mornings where you're the first thing I see when I open my eyes. I imagine coming home to the sound of your laughter, or even just the quiet of your presence. I imagine little arguments about silly things, what to cook, what to watch, who forgot to turn off the lights, and I imagine the peace of knowing that, no matter what, you'll still be there at the end of the day. I even imagine us growing old, our hair turning silver, our hands marked by time, but still finding the same comfort in holding each other as we do now." His words fell gently but with weight, each sentence a thread weaving the future he saw, binding it to the present moment. Emma's breath caught in her throat. The vision he painted was so tender, so ordinary yet extraordinary, that it settled deep into her heart like a promise. She looked at him, her eyes shimmering in the moonlight, and for the first time, she allowed herself to see the possibilities that had always frightened her. "It sounds so beautiful," she murmured, her voice unsteady, betraying the swell of emotion that rose within her. "But what if life doesn't turn out that way? What if we lose this? What if we lose us?" Her fears poured out like a confession she had long kept hidden, her words trembling with the fragility of hope and the fear of disappointment. It was the kind of honesty that came only in the vulnerable hours of midnight, when the heart spoke louder than reason. Adrian reached for her hand again, this time with more certainty, his thumb brushing gently across her knuckles as though soothing the storm her words carried. His eyes met hers, unwavering, steady, like the anchor she had always searched for. "Emma," he whispered, his tone carrying both strength and tenderness, "life is never certain. We might stumble, we might fall, we might even face storms that try to tear us apart. But what I know, what I feel here, right now, is that if love is real, it doesn't vanish with uncertainty. It grows. It learns. It endures. I can't promise you a life without pain or doubt, but I can promise you this: I will not stop choosing you. Every day, every moment, for as long as I am able. That's the only certainty I can give, and it's the only one I need." Her heart swelled with his words, a quiet ache blooming within her chest, not of sorrow but of overwhelming gratitude. She realized that love was not about building perfect futures, but about finding the courage to build imperfect ones together. The weight of her fears began to ease, replaced by a fragile but steady faith that perhaps this was what love truly meant, not the absence of doubt, but the presence of someone who chose to face it with you. She leaned her head gently against his shoulder, her body melting into the safety of his embrace, and the world seemed to pause, as though the stars themselves had bowed in reverence to the truth unfolding between them. In that quiet moment, Emma and Adrian were not merely dreamers of love but participants in it, weaving their future with each word, each touch, each breath beneath the eternal witness of the midnight sky. The minutes stretched into something timeless, the night holding them gently as though reluctant to let their hearts part from the sanctuary they had created together. Emma remained with her head against Adrian's shoulder, her breathing steadying, her soul quieting in the rhythm of his presence. Yet within her, an unease stirred, not because of him, but because of the secrets she had carried, silent shadows that whispered in the back of her mind even in her happiest moments. Midnight had a way of coaxing the truth from hearts, and tonight was no exception. She lifted her head slightly, her gaze searching the patterns of the stars as if seeking courage from their ancient glow. "Adrian," she began softly, her tone threaded with hesitation, "there are parts of me you don't know. Things I've hidden, not because I don't trust you, but because I've been afraid that if you saw them, you wouldn't stay." Her words trembled in the air, fragile confessions wrapped in fear, and for a heartbeat she wished she could take them back, afraid of the silence that might follow. Adrian did not answer immediately, and Emma felt her chest tighten in the pause, as though the night itself held its breath. Then he turned to her, his expression calm, his eyes deep with quiet strength. "Emma," he said gently, "we all carry shadows. We all have scars. If you think yours could make me leave, then you don't know me as well as you think. I don't love only the easy parts of you. I want all of it, the light and the dark, the laughter and the fears. Whatever you're hiding, it won't change what I feel." His words did not fall with dramatic force, they were steady, rooted, like the foundation of something unshakable. They reached into her fear and offered her not denial but acceptance, not conditions but devotion. Her throat tightened as she swallowed back tears. For years, she had built walls around the deepest corners of her heart, afraid that the wrong glance or the wrong word might shatter everything she hoped to protect. Yet here he was, standing steady at the gates of her vulnerability, not demanding entry but promising to wait, promising not to leave. There were times, she whispered, her voice breaking, when I thought love was something I would never find. I've been hurt before, Adrian, left with words unspoken, left with promises broken. I told myself I was stronger for it, that I didn't need anyone, but the truth is, I was just scared. Scared of opening my heart again, scared of giving someone the power to hurt me. And then you came, and it felt different, it felt real, but the fear never really left. Her confession spilled like a river that had been dammed too long, each word carrying both pain and relief. Adrian's hand moved to her cheek, his thumb brushing softly across her skin, and his voice dropped to a whisper that wrapped around her like a vow. Emma, I can't promise that I'll never make mistakes. I can't promise that there won't be days when we hurt, when we struggle, when life tests us. But what I can promise is that I will never walk away because of your fears, your scars, or your past. If anything, I love you more because of them, because they shaped you into the woman who's standing here with me tonight. And I don't want perfection. I want you. Just you. His words sank into her like rain into thirsty soil, nourishing the parts of her she had long neglected, washing away the doubts she had held onto for so long. The tears she had tried to hold back spilled then, but they were not heavy with sorrow, they were light with release, with the sweetness of being seen and accepted wholly. She let them fall, and Adrian simply held her closer, not asking her to stop, not fearing her vulnerability, but embracing it as though it was the most beautiful part of her. The world below kept spinning, the city lights flickered like 1,000 restless hearts, but on that balcony, in the quiet cradle of midnight, Emma felt something she had thought impossible: peace. For the first time in years, her fears no longer owned her, and it was because Adrian had met them not with judgment but with love. And as she rested against him, she realized that this was what the midnight love talk was truly about, not just whispered dreams or tender touches, but the courage to lay bare the soul and find that love, real love, does not retreat from the shadows but shines brighter within them. The night had deepened into its quietest hour, the world around them softened into shadows and silver light. The stars above burned brighter, as though they, too, wanted to linger and witness the unfolding of a love that was fragile yet unbreakable. Emma and Adrian remained close, the silence between them no longer filled with doubts or confessions, but with a quiet certainty that needed no language. For a long while, they said nothing, simply breathing in unison, their hearts beating to the same invisible rhythm. It was in that silence, heavy with meaning yet light as air, that Emma realized something profound. Love did not always arrive with grand gestures or flawless moments. Sometimes, it came in the stillness of midnight, in the warmth of a hand that refused to let go, in the courage of two souls choosing each other over and over again, no matter how fragile the world might seem. Adrian finally spoke, his voice low, a tender rumble that blended with the hum of the night. "Do you know what I love most about this moment?" he asked softly, turning his gaze toward her with a smile that seemed to carry the weight of eternity. Emma tilted her head, curious, her eyes shimmering in the moonlight. "What?" she whispered, her lips curving into the faintest smile. He exhaled slowly, his fingers tightening around hers, as though grounding his words with touch. "That it feels infinite. Like no matter what comes tomorrow, this moment will stay. That even if the stars burned out, or the city fell silent, I would still remember the way you look right now, the way your voice carries like music into the night. It feels like the kind of memory I'll carry for the rest of my life." His confession was not elaborate, but it wrapped around her heart like a sacred vow, a truth carved into the quietness of midnight itself. Emma's chest swelled with a mixture of love and wonder. She turned slightly, her free hand reaching up to rest against his cheek, her fingertips tracing the line of his jaw as though she wanted to memorize him too. "Then let's keep it," she whispered, her voice trembling but strong with intent. "Not just as a memory, but as a promise. That no matter what tomorrow brings, no matter how messy or uncertain life becomes, we'll carry this moment with us. And when we doubt, When we're tired, when we're afraid, we'll remember tonight. We'll remember that love doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be true. Her words trembled with sincerity, a vow woven from both hope and vulnerability, and when she finished, she leaned forward, closing the small distance between them until her forehead rested gently against his. For a long, unbroken breath, they stayed like that, foreheads touching, eyes closed, their hearts pressed into the stillness of the night. No kiss was needed, no elaborate gesture, because what they shared in that quiet contact was more intimate than any physical act. It was the language of souls speaking, promising, belonging. The world beyond the balcony seemed to vanish, the hum of the city fading into silence, the stars blurring into one vast sea of light. All that remained was them, two people, two hearts, bound not by circumstance but by choice. Emma felt the last of her fears dissolve, replaced by a steady warmth that told her she was home, and home was not a place but a person, standing beside her in the glow of midnight. The clock inside the apartment chimed softly, its echo carrying into the balcony like a gentle reminder that time, though eternal, was still moving. Yet neither Emma nor Adrian felt the need to move, for they knew they had captured something rare, a moment beyond time, a memory that would echo through the years. As the chime faded into silence, Adrian whispered one last promise, his voice breaking the stillness with the softness of devotion. Wherever we go, whatever happens, you'll never have to wonder if love was written for us. Because it was. And tonight, under these stars, we've written it ourselves. Emma's eyes opened, glistening with unshed tears that were not of sadness but of profound joy. She smiled, her lips curving with the certainty of someone who had finally found what her heart had been searching for. She did not answer with words, she didn't need to. Instead, she let the silence carry her reply, her fingers tightening around his as if to seal the vow in something stronger than speech. Together, they turned their gaze back to the sky, their souls bound by the whispers of the night, their love etched into the fabric of midnight itself. And as the world slept on, unaware of the story being written above its rooftops, Emma and Adrian's midnight love talk came to rest in eternity, a quiet flame burning against the endless dark.